You got it.
Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of I Like Art podcast. My name is Sarah Glupker, and I am very excited to chat with our special guest today. She was my first professor I ever had at Western Michigan University, and I'm so excited to chat with her. Before we get started, I'd like to let you know who she is. And if you get a chance after the introduction, hit the pause button and go check out her art and then come back. I think it really adds something to the interview when you get to see the art with the artist. So, all right, without further ado, she has been a professional artist for over 30 years. And in her paintings, she uses patterns to vividly represent human emotions and experience and to convey not just beauty, but tension. Her current work represents an intersection of information, emotion, and physical limitations. The patterns and colors inhabit spaces that are similar, but not the same, suggesting multiple realities in the same composition. Each composition is engaged in some form of conflict, suggesting our shared moment in American history, our creative resilience, and transformative struggles. She has been a regular presenter and instructor at the International Encaustic Conference in Provincetown, Massachusetts, and has taught painting workshops in the US and in Indonesia. She earned BFAs in painting and art history from the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, and an MFA in art from Bowling Green State University, Bowling Green, Ohio. She has an extensive exhibition record that includes solo exhibitions at Vanderbilt University, the University of Illinois, Chicago, the Maryland Institute of Art, and she's had a solo show in Yogyakarta, Java, Indonesia. In addition, she has a considerable record of international and national group exhibitions, has been recognized through various grants, and has been a fellow at several artist colonies, including a 2022 Golden Foundation for the Arts experimental residency, which I would love to chat with you about that. Her work is represented in numerous private and public collections. She was the 2021 Distinguished Faculty Scholar at Western Michigan University and 2015 College of Fine Arts Roerich Distinguished Professor also at WMU. She teaches painting in the Gwen Frostic School of Art, and she lives and works in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is one of my favorite places ever. She is represented by Addington Gallery in Chicago, Illinois. And without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to my special guest today, Kat Crotchett, professor at Western Michigan University. Welcome, Kat. Thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for having me. I'm delighted to be here. And it's just been amazing to see where you've gone since you were a student in my class. I'm really proud of you.
Oh, gosh. Thank you. I know I graduated in 2005, so it was a little bit ago. And I will say I met my husband in your class. So thank you. You can take some of the credit. And we actually didn't date until the next semester, but because we were in your class and I made some friends in your class, and it was very cool because we were the only two from your class to be in this other drawing class. And then we hit it off. So the rest is history. And I would like to say you have a part in it. So,
Oh, thank you.
well, thank you. And you did teach me so many things. You were definitely one of my favorite professors. And I will never forget. I still have some of the drawings from your class. In fact, I should have pulled them out. That would have been really fun. But thank you so much for being here. This is a fun full circle moment, and I'm so honored to chat with you. And I know my listeners are just going to love hearing your perspective working at the university, all of the shows that you do. You have such an extensive resume, and I loved even sharing that part of it. And so thank you again for being here. Now,
Thank you. Mhm.
let's get started. It's always interesting to hear because I feel like every artist has a different story about how they originated. Go back as far as you like. What was it? Were you an artist as a child? What was when did your art journey start?
Well, it's because I grew up in the country
Mm,
and there wasn't a lot to do, especially in the winter in Illinois. And my sisters liked art, and I was the youngest of four girls. And I loved to watch Romper Room, which was a kids show that was hosted by a different hostess in cities across the United States. So for me, it was KTVI in St. Louis, and it was Miss Lois. And she would say at some point in her show, please send her drawings of like a crow or a barn or a cat. And so I would send her drawings, or I would make the drawings and my sisters would help me mail them. And then I would get these postcard pictures of her with her kids on the set,
Oh,
um,
wow.
back. And they would be postcards that looked like they were handwritten on the back, but they were just mass produced, and they would have blanks for certain things, for the kid's name
Mm.
and for her to sign her name physically. And
Ooh.
yeah, so actually they're in my office now, hanging over the door. They're framed. So it was like my
Oh,
first
wow.
validation of art.
Okay.
And I was probably about 4 when I did those.
Aw, what a treasure. I love that. And good for
And
her.
she actually did write me a little note that was personal on one of them, because Miss Lois was off for a time, and so Miss Jane was the replacement hostess, and she had been the hostess that preceded Miss Lois. And I had
Mm.
written that my sisters loved her because she was their hostess. So she wrote
Oh,
me a little note. Yeah, and
that's
it
fun.
felt very personal.
Oh, yeah. I love that you still have them. That's so amazing. So right from the gate, you have been an artist. And I can relate to, I also grew up in the country and we didn't have, my parents didn't buy us a ton of stuff. I think we just had to be creative and use what we had. And, it was just the best though, being outside and making art and stuff like that. And your sisters were into art too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And 2 of them have graduate degrees in art
Oh,
as
wow.
well. Hmm.
Oh, a
And
whole
then the one who
family.
doesn't have a graduate degree in art always had a studio at her home for a long time. So she still made art and was in art groups. So,
Amazing.
and it's interesting because my parents probably would have said they weren't particularly creative, but they were in kind of non-traditional ways. Like my dad would buy stuff at auctions. I remember he bought some jet fuel tanks and tried to make them into kayaks. That was a whole summer project that never worked.
No way.
But it was a really good example of tenacity, that he
Mm-hmm.
kept trying. He kept taking it to the pond and seeing if it would float, and it would tip over. And yeah, so
Oh,
they were creative in unexpected ways.
okay. I love that. I think we need more of that. Can you describe your art? Because the podcast is hard. It's an audible thing, but I have a YouTube channel too, but can you describe it? It's so amazing.
Um, it's really colorful. So I've always responded to really bright colors. And one thing that's been consistent throughout my practice has been pattern and color. And I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
it's because I was born in the 60s and my mom made a lot of our clothes, and things
Mm.
were wildly patterned. When I look at them, like sometimes I'm wearing the same fabric as my sisters and I'm on their lap and I'm merging into them. And other times I'm wearing something that really clashes. But
Mm-hmm.
patterns have always been a part of my work. And for a long time, my work was figurative. Now it's very pattern based.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's been patterns kind of abiding each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it still is to a degree, but working at Golden Foundation and acrylics, over time, what I found is those 2 methods of working are starting to merge together. So
Ooh.
line and layers of line work are becoming more important in both my encaustic paintings and my acrylic works.
Mm. Do you work in oil at
No,
all? No. But I feel
no,
like, did you used to?
no.
No?
I worked
Okay.
in oil as an undergraduate and for probably a semester as a graduate
Mm-hmm.
student. And then I started working in oil stick and oil pastel,
Mm-hmm.
because I really like to layer color. I teach oil
Yes.
paint all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something I teach regularly, but I don't use in my practice anymore. I briefly tried to use oil and cold wax.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I still keep that stuff around because you never
Mm-hmm.
know when you'll gravitate back to
Yeah.
it, or when
Mm-hmm.
it'll be appropriate.
Same. I'm very same. Once I
Hmm.
switched to acrylic, it's like no turning back, man. I don't know. It's so different. But okay, now I'm very intrigued by this
Hmm.
golden opportunity. Golden paint is it's my love language. I'm obsessed. I have the heavy, I have the medium, I have the fluid. I love all of it so much. The pigment is the best. And can you talk about that? Because this is like, can I come hang out with you next time you go see them? Because I seriously love that. I tag them on social and they always respond back. They're very nice. And I'm like, oh, I love your paint. It's so good. Because I feel
Have,
like acrylic, really good quality, bright colored acrylics are hard to find versus oil. You can buy cheap oil paint and
mhm.
it's vibrant, but with acrylics, it can get like reds can be so dull and the blues are never the same. And so,
Right. And sometimes it's the quality of the pigment or the amount of filler that's in the paint.
yeah.
So first, let me just say the Golden Foundation and Golden Artist Colors are amazing. Like
Mm,
they're located in New Berlin, New York, which is like in the middle of upstate New York. It's the nearest big town is pretty far away. You have to drive like half an hour to get to a grocery store.
mm,
So you're
wow.
rural, and it's beautiful there. Most of the material specialists they have test their materials to try to see if they can break them
Mm,
in really surprising ways. So the way they make their products and test them, I feel like is just really, really beyond commendable. So they're
mm-hmm,
really committed to quality. But also, when you're a Golden Foundation artist, um, you're part of their Golden family for the rest of your life. So they treat you very specially. You get to meet, you're there with the family. The family is the huge part of the Golden Foundation.
mm,
And it's wonderful to hear their stories about people they've worked with over the years and how the company founded with
mm-hmm,
Sam and Adele Golden. But also, you get to do workshops over at Golden Artist Color. So this is the only residence I've done where you take workshops, and some of them are required.
mm.
And so the required ones help you learn their product line.
Okay.
So the material specialists are actually teaching you about their products, from the core watercolors to the Williamsburg oils, and then all the acrylics that they make, and the mediums. Oh my gosh, the mediums!
Oh, the
And then
mediums. Yes.
you learn things you can do with them where you're like, oh my gosh, I have to try this now.
Yeah.
Um, and then they also have technicals that are optional. And what I found with my group of residents, because it's 3 residents at a time,
Mm,
it's a little workspace. So you have your own little apartment and shared living room and kitchen. And
mm,
then you have studio spaces, which they would say one is shared, but it's so huge. It's really 2 studios with divided walls. But
mm-hmm.
the technicals were so amazing. None of us wanted to miss any of them because they were like information bombs going off in your head.
Mm.
Um,
This sounds
so
amazing.
yeah, and one of the residents recorded them, which was great because she shared the recordings with the rest of us.
Yeah.
Um, and then once you're a resident, you're invited back to their Made in Paint exhibition, which is juried.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went in April with my partner and husband JD, and it was great because he got to see where I was for a month, and he'd heard stories about the koi dogs, which are coyote dog hybrids, and golden artist colors. Oh yeah, there's lots of stuff. But
Coyote,
anyway,
coyote dog hybrid?
they apparently exist in a lot of areas where coyotes mate with dogs.
I feel like my grandma had this. Yes. She
And
got from Texas. Is like, we don't know what this dog is, but it looks like a coyote. His name was Killer. Anyway, side note. Wow.
so yeah, you're really out there because I did see koi dogs and I did see a coyote outside my apartment window. And it was cool because I was there with 2 residents and they saw the coyote too because I could hear them. They were on different floors of the building and they were like, "Oh my gosh!"
This
Um,
is amazing.
but anyway, so it was great to meet the other residents who'd been there for the year, and the show was just incredible. The reception was amazing, but they housed us. They got like an Airbnb for all of us, and they had a special brunch for us at the residence the next day. So our families could see where we had been and meet who we'd worked with. And it was just really
Mm,
very wonderful. But yeah, I had not worked a lot with acrylics. So I had taught acrylics, so I knew
mm-hmm.
enough to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned so much from them about how you could use things. And they would also pull things, custom products out for you to try. For the
Mm-hmm.
first week I was there, Jessica, um, who was the assistant there and manager, kept bringing me stuff to write with paint.
Mm.
And then I realized it was because one of my first questions in the intake interview was, I want to know how to make lines with paint. And so she was ordering things and bringing me everything she could find to make lines with.
Oh, wow. This sounds
But
amazing.
their paints have a really high pigment quality.
Mm-hmm. I
and the
know.
quality is very consistent. So yeah, I've been teaching my students here
Yes.
about all the ways they can use acrylics. And it's always interesting when I pull stuff out, like I did a demo like a week and a half ago on acrylic skins and jelly plate printing. And they were like, oh my gosh, I want to do that.
Yeah. What a gift to the university that you have had this training because acrylic is so new, right? It's such a new medium. Oil paint's been around forever. Water media has been around forever. But acrylic it's this whole different thing. And to teach all of those techniques, I mean, what a treasure of
Well,
knowledge that you have from it.
well, the other thing I learned is just that it's not static, and no material is, because people are always figuring out new ways to use it. So
Mm-hmm.
new materials are being
Yes.
developed that are acrylic based. Um, and it's interesting how the manufacturers know each other. So prior to that, and I'm still a big R&F handmade paints girl in my encaustic practice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're both in New York State and they're friends. They know each other really well,
Oh my
the founders of
goodness.
those companies. So they communicate all the time. So, like, one of the residents was playing with their oil line a lot,
Mm.
and they handed her some R&F pigment sticks and said, here, try
Wow.
these.
Oh, it's like a family, but they get along, right? Two
It is.
families.
And they get along
That's
really
so
well
cool.
because they're all bringing unique things to the conversation, and they're all there to help artists be their best creative selves.
Mm. As if I didn't love golden paint enough now. It's like, man, the love only goes deeper. I would absolutely love to interview now that I know more about this story. The founder or somebody from Golden would be super cool to interview. I'm sure you know somebody,
I do.
maybe. But I love this so much because it's a company that it sounds, not only is their product so incredible because I've even said on my stories before, like, I'm not sponsored. I'm just obsessed. I just love their paint so much. It makes my job so easy. The painting I'm working on right now, it's the medium body and the fluid, and you use both of the types of acrylic paint and you figure out, different phases, different layers you can do the different applications, and it just does make things so much easier, and I just love it so much. So to hear how they support artists and they bring them in as part of this family, I love that. And it's not all about what they make. It's about who uses it. So I think that's
No,
amazing.
and my sense as a resident was that, because I've had some people say, I bet they brought you in because you teach at a university, so that's a good marketing thing. And I don't think they do it for marketing purposes at all. It's called an experimental residency because they really want to see what artists can do with their product. And
Mm.
the company was founded um, by Sam and Mark Golden in Sam's garage after he retired from Bucor Paints,
Oh, I love
and
this.
they would go to New York every weekend and take products to artists in the city. They would visit their studios and then say, "Okay, give me some feedback. Let me know what you liked about this." So for them, it's really a way to continue a direct relationship with working artists.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so good. Wow. Thank you for sharing all of this. This is juicier than I thought it would be.
And I do have to say, the company is employee owned.
Really? Oh my
Mm-hmm.
goodness. It's like as if it doesn't get better. I love it. It's gonna make me have so much more pride even when I use the paints. And it is an investment at first because it's not the cheap it's I used to joke that it was actually made out of gold because it's a pricier paint, but you use less of it because it's higher pigment and it's higher quality. So now that we've talked about Golden, that's today's sponsor, unofficial. Everybody should go buy Golden Paint. Seriously though, I will brag about them forever. I love that so much. Thank you for sharing. And the residency, is that something that artists apply for, or how did that come about?
It's something artists apply for. It's highly competitive,
Hmm.
and they ask you all kinds of questions in the application. The year I was a resident, there were 18 residents.
Okay.
So we were the second group that was open after COVID.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm not sure how many are usually there during a
Yeah.
year, but it's a limited number because it's 3 people a month and they don't do residencies 12 months a year. So it's only a certain
Okay.
number of months. Um,
Amazing.
so Hundreds of people apply.
Yeah. How
And then
life-changing.
when you get it, you get a call.
You get a phone call? Oh, even
You get
better.
a phone call.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, it's so great. Thank you for sharing all of that. Okay, you work at the university
Mhm.
and you work with students, and man, I had the chance to come in and talk to your class last spring, which was incredible and made my artist soul so happy. And I felt like, man, these guys look so young, right? Now that it's 20 years later for me. But what is your favorite part about being a professor in the arts, working with these younger students? What is it that lights you up? Because
There's a
you
lot.
clearly love what you do.
I do, but also there's a lot that lights me up because um, I would say the one constant through the years, even though students have changed and trends in education, is I love moments where students have an aha
Mm,
moment,
hmm
where suddenly things start to click into place for them, whether it's how to do something technically or whether it's something conceptually they're working on. Or, for example, I have a student who's a recent BFA in painting major, and she's got so many credits, she's going to graduate in spring semester. So she's working on her work for her show. And in my last class, she was doing kind of medium-sized paintings for the most part, and she shifted to big 48 by 48 canvases.
Ooh.
And it's been incredible to see her blossom. So I
Mm,
think seeing that individual and collective growth is really special. And I think when you're a working artist and you're teaching, I think they feed each other. So what happens in my studio sometimes comes into the classroom, and
hmm
also things from the classroom come into my studio. The
Oh,
other
yeah.
thing that's kind of interesting, having taught, adult workshops and then classes to college age people, is that for some reason, and I'm one of them, adults who've been working for a while, we tend to follow the rules people give us
hmm
before we break them.
Yeah.
And students just let everything fly.
Yeah.
So they'll throw everything into one painting without trying different things and seeing how it's going to work. And amazing things can happen because of that.
hmm The fear is not there, or they're just unhinged a little bit. They just let the creativity flow. But
Well, yeah, and sometimes the fear is there. And one of the good teaching
mm,
moments is when you see somebody get past their fear and kind of
yeah.
recognize you, just kind of fling yourself into things sometimes.
hmm Oh, I love that. There's so many good takeaways with that. And it's the energy, right? It's that energy and enthusiasm for the arts because, if somebody is a career artist like myself and I have artist friends, you can get kind of beat down after a certain amount of years. So it's kind of nice to see this fresh energy, this new perspective, and, the innovation from these students, I bet.
But one thing I have to tell you is, when you were here last semester, my students just loved talking to you. They love seeing how you built your career. They love seeing how you've made your way as a visual artist, with a continuing practice, and how you've balanced everything. So that was really meaningful for them. And it was the first time I've talked to students as they're about to graduate and they've used the word business plan.
Oh, okay. Oh, this is a yes. Okay. I have something to say about that. Well, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
I loved going in there. I just want to say if you're because I have a hybrid of professional artists and also people who are interested in being a creative but not monetizing their creativity. So I have a wide variety of people that listen to the podcast, but I will say if you're a local artist and you want to give back to the community, you need to reach out to the local schools, whether it's a university or it's a regular, like a K through 12 school. Get in touch with the art teachers and go in there and talk to the students because just like with you working with these young people, it's very inspirational to be around that. And also it's a great moment to help because yeah, there's so many things that you have to teach. And I will say when I graduated, I love that. I think that's so awesome that you brought me in because it's a very unclear path when you graduate. And so to have a working artist on the outside doing something completely different than what you're doing, and you're exhibiting your work and you're working at the university, there's so many ways to do it. It's really valuable to bring in those other perspectives for these students. And I just think that's so amazing. And I hope that we can continue doing some things together. Now we're talking about that. And I just hope that this conversation really sparks these ideas with people in other communities, whether, whether you're a professor and you want to invite a local artist, or you're the local artist and you want to talk to some students. I think this relationship of bringing in people who are creative in a variety of ways is so important. So, and I also want to say, when I graduated, I did have a feeling for a moment of, why didn't my professors teach the business plan? But how can you expect, now that I'm much older and wiser, I realize that you teach according to your curriculum and the benchmarks that you have to teach, and it's not built into your programming, because you're teaching very important things as far as technique, aesthetics, art history. There's so much that you offer that we can't expect our professors to provide that extra training. And there are so many resources out there now that you can buy a book on accounting and learn accounting, or you can meet with a local accountant and learn how to do bookkeeping. That it's unfair, I think, for us to expect that from our professors, because you're doing your job. That's not your job. But I think it is very helpful when you bring in other people that can do that. So I don't know if that makes any sense.
I do want to say, so I've just recently made a connection with someone in the business college, because he
Mm,
needed kind of a general art and also social protest art kind of
okay.
presentation to some students he was taking to a museum in San Francisco.
Hmm.
And so he didn't have a budget. And so I said, okay, so let's trade. I'll do
Hmm.
this virtual presentation for you, and you need to do a presentation on business plans for my
I
students.
love that.
So,
Yes.
yeah, so that's a good thing. But also, I did want to say a lot of universities now, ours included, have a professional practices class or two, where
Yeah.
students have to do their resumes. They have to do certain things that relate to being a professionally practicing artist. And for your listeners out there who are saying, "Yeah, but I'm not a university student. How do I do this?" You can use the resources Sarah mentioned, but also I know a lot of colleges and universities have elements in their business departments where people from the community can come in and learn how to do a business plan,
Okay.
because they
Yes.
want to see people succeed. And I didn't realize that this was here until I
Hmm.
was talking to someone who used to run a vintage clothing shop in town. And she said that's how she started. She did a business plan through the business college here, and they had a special service for people in the community.
Oh, okay. So you have to do some digging around. You have to kind
Hmm.
of search. And I love hearing that the university is building in those programs, because it is so important. Even if it costs more, even if it's an extra full class that they need to take, well worth it, because it's just setting everybody up for more success when they graduate. When I went to Western, my advisor was Ellen Armstrong, and she did an amazing job. And she kind of helped me sort out my path, because originally I wanted to become a full-time professor. That was my goal. And then I ended up switching things up and realizing I wanted to sell my art and maybe not teach. And so she kind of directed me towards the business college. So I did minor in business. I don't know if you knew that.
I
And
did. That's great.
I was I'm sure the business college is the same, but the art department students and the business college students look very different. So I was this art student coming from painting class, and I had, my painter jeans and my huge portfolio and my tackle box full of supplies, walking through the business college with these kids that were dressed very nicely for school, more business attire and whatnot. And I just totally stuck out. It was kind of funny, but anyway, enough about that. So I love hearing all of that. And I think it's important to just feel our way through these situations. If you're young, talking to an advisor like mine, she helped me kind of navigate that, and really figuring out where are the gaps and how you can fill those in. So I just love that there's a class. That's amazing. Okay, I have a question for you. So if you have someone who's interested in pursuing a career in the arts and going to art school, what would your advice be? How do you decide what school to even attend?
Well, that's an interesting question because my son is almost 18 years old and he's not going to art school, but we're looking at colleges. So,
Okay, perfect
so
time.
I'm on the other side of things for once. And I would say, if you can, for sure visit the school's websites and kind of see what they look like. But the best thing to do is to visit the schools and see what the vibe is. And if you have an opportunity, talk to the students. And most art schools and universities and colleges now make sure if they have an open house or a tour that you are talking to a student, so
Mm-hmm.
that opportunity is readily available,
Okay.
and kind of see how they talk about the place.
Mm-hmm.
Also look at what opportunities are there,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I found it really interesting to see how many places have internships available, so they're very proactive with their alumni in getting internships for their students. Or what I'm noticing is, yeah, schools has changed a lot since I went to school, but
Mm-hmm.
also I think they're really trying to give prospective students the opportunity to build what they need to
Mm-hmm.
into their matriculation, or how they're matriculating through the program.
Mm-hmm.
So just looking at places to see if it's a good fit,
Yeah.
because you can usually tell really
Yeah.
quickly.
You can get a sense. You
You
can kind of,
can.
yeah.
Yep. And also just to see how supported you feel the students are there.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And I will say too, so my oldest is 15. She's a freshman in high school, and she's starting to, you have those conversations about what you want to be when you grow up. And I think it was one of my kids that said, well, mom, you don't necessarily need to go to college to do what you do. So would you go you know, if you were to do it now? And I believe that my degree is still, I'm so glad I went. I learned a lot. It also gave me so much confidence. And I can't imagine starting my art career without having gone. So I've told them, you also take other classes and you come out this, more well-rounded person. And so it's not only what you learn in my art classes, but it was all of the other classes too. And still super, super valuable. So no, I wouldn't have changed anything. I think, but I also know there's a huge debate about self-taught artists versus formally trained. And I think at the end of the day, it's just hard. You're going to have wounds coming out either side. So, you might as well, whatever path is for you is going to happen. So, but yeah, I definitely think it was just a really good move to go to school. And I do hope my girls go. And so, that's just
Well,
kind of
and
my take on it.
one thing we've told our son is that he doesn't know what he wants to study. And that's fine. I actually think sometimes it's better
Hmm.
because how you haven't been exposed to that much.
Yeah.
With Legos and stuff like that. And I had a student in my painting class in the spring who was had started off in mechanical engineering and had
Mm,
shifted to product design. And I was
okay.
asking him why, and he said, "Well, because mechanical engineering is all math, and I want something where I can use my mind, but I want to use my hands too."
Hmm.
And so I went home and told my son that, and the look on his face was really interesting because he just veered straight away from engineering then.
Oh,
And actually, I
okay.
had a friend in product design who gave him a tour of the space, and I think it was the first time he was at a university where he saw
Mm,
something that he that surprised him. He
hmm.
didn't know this field existed. I don't think he's going to go into product design, but it
Hmm.
was like the first time he could kind of see himself at a university. And I
Okay.
think one of the most important things about education past the K through 12 is just that you get exposed to new ideas and new
Hmm.
people, and it
Yes.
changes who you are and how you see the world, no matter what area you go into and no matter what field you end up working in.
Yeah.
So even if it's that you're better with different types of people because you've encountered them, or it expands your horizons in other ways, I think it can be very worthwhile.
Yes. I agree 100%. 100%. Okay. Do you have time? Can we keep going?
Yep,
More
we can keep
questions?
going.
Okay. All right. You are a full-time professor, you're exhibiting, you're a working artist, and you're a mom and a wife. Here's the million-dollar question. Maybe I want to know the answer too. But how do you find balance? How do you allow yourself to explore everything that you want to explore? How do you find time? What do you do to take care of yourself? It's a lot of questions.
Does anyone ever really get to do everything they want to do?
No, right. The answer is
um,
no.
but I think part of it is um, several things. One is that, my partner in life, JD Dolan, is a writer. So he's a creative person. And so we understand each other's creative processes
Mm-hmm.
and the kind of support we need from each other to do our work. So I think that's really great. I feel also really lucky that I'm at a research institution.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes a huge difference in the balancing act for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I intentionally chose research oriented institutions so I'd still have time for my studio practice. And, I'm at a place where right now I get a studio through my employer, which is great. And that's one of
Mm-hmm.
the reasons I came here, because to me, it meant something really special was happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And that was before I even knew other special things that happen here. So I feel supported in different ways and feel really fortunate to have colleagues who are all practicing artists as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a working community where we're all trying to find that work-life balance, and it's different for everyone. So for some people, it involves doing most of their practice in the summers
Mm,
and not teaching in the summers. For me, I'm in the studio whenever I'm not teaching. And
mm-hmm.
recently, um, last year, I realized, I can't. So I asked JD, okay, so during the week, can you take on all food responsibilities so I don't have to do this? Because I realized it was really stressing me out to come home and make dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which sounds like a simple thing, but sometimes
No.
it's not.
Yeah, I get
Not when
that.
you're feeding other people. If you're just feeding yourself, it's
Right.
okay, maybe.
Yeah.
Even then, sometimes that takes too much time. So, so I think you have to find whatever works for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, I noticed I just got a text from my son asking me if I could help him with Common App stuff this afternoon. So priorities, sometimes the priority is to be in my studio. Like today, I can tell, okay, the priority is going to be to be home later to assist him.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just adopted a puppy Friday. So I'm also
Oh.
trying to remember to make sure when I come home that I assist my partner and okay, I take the dog out now,
Mm-hmm.
and know that I'm going to do that. So some of it is kind of figuring out how to balance things with the people you live and work with,
Yeah.
I think. And I don't think that's always easy. I think it can be very complicated.
Yeah. I understand this wholeheartedly, 100% completely. Yes. I think
And I
that's
will
great.
say, like sometimes I include my son when I'm getting ready for a show or to take new work to the gallery. I'll often say, can you come and help me
Mm,
wrap pieces? I need some help.
mm-hmm.
And every time he does now, I'll say, so you may not realize this, but you have a skill set now
Mm-hmm.
that's employable as an art
Mm-hmm.
handler. He's like,
Yeah.
whatever. It's like, no, you really do. Like,
Yeah.
this is a specialized set of skills you've learned because you helped me in my studio.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes I pay him, not a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's McDonald's and $10
Yeah.
an hour, but
Yeah.
I pay
Right.
him.
I know. I've been doing that with my girls too. And sometimes they decide it's not as fun. They're like, I'd rather not do that with you, mom. It's like, well, I'm paying you. This would be, but yeah, it's such a cool thing. Art handling now, I that's a new idea because I'm so particular about how my work is handled. It's got to be a little bit of a leap to be like, here, son, here. Oh, don't touch the front or whatever. Um, but yeah, that's such a good skill that they can use, or even working for a moving company, you would have a sense of how things are packaged and transported and whatnot. So I love that. Yeah, and balance is so hard. I think that's such a tricky word because what is balance? It's more so figuring out how the pieces all fit together like a puzzle. And sometimes you're putting more effort into the family part or, teaching or whatever, or your practice. So it's all about making it work. Thank you for sharing that. That's such a good answer. Okay, I've been really wanting to ask you this because in 2009, you said you went to Indonesia. And
Hmm.
so I've had the pleasure of knowing you beyond graduation because I had an art studio in the Park Trade Center building in Kalamazoo, which is a huge 4-story building full of over 60 art studios. And I ended up working part-time for the management and doing their marketing. And at that time, we were working out contract with Western Michigan University to bring all of the professors to those studio spaces. So I think that and they ended up having about a dozen professors move into the studios in the building. So I would see you quite often. And I remember when you went to Indonesia and you were telling me about your trip. And maybe I'm not remembering this correctly, but I feel like because I'm still thinking about this, you were talking about how the culture treats artists. And when they have an exhibit, they treated them like rock stars. Now, is that true? Or did I make that up?
I have to see if my memory is correct. But what I remember is that yes, they did sometimes. So there were
Posters.
posters, yeah,
Yes.
like rock star posters of artists outside exhibition spaces. Yes,
Yes. And it was like a
and that was
thing.
that was happening before it happened here in the States. Before galleries did banners here.
Okay.
Um, yeah, it was a thing, and these were big banners.
Yes. I felt like you even mentioned that for the opening, it was like the entrance, even with the artist, that people would be so excited to meet the artist, and that artists in that culture are revered so highly, like rock stars, like we would say, celebrities here. And I felt like, man, that would be so cool, right?
I
So someday,
definitely, I
go ahead.
definitely felt like artists had a different place in the culture
Hmm.
that was codified historically and that was really respected. And I also felt like there was a real sense of community among the artists.
Hmm.
So I was in Yogyakarta, which was kind of the arts capital of Java.
Hmm.
Um, so it's smaller than Jakarta, but it's
Hmm.
still really, really big. Like Java has a huge population. You're never really out in the country.
Mm.
Um, and artists would support each other. Like if there was an earthquake and somebody's studio got damaged, they would help them rebuild. So there was this
Mm.
sense of community. And I met one artist who lived part time in Indonesia for half the year, and then the other half of the year he lived, I think, in Liechtenstein.
Mm.
And when he was in Jakarta, he would support young people by teaching them how to pack artwork for
Mm.
artists.
Okay.
So they would have an employable skill set, but they would
Hmm.
also be doing something that was needed in that community. So a lot of the artists were very active. They showed in Singapore, they showed all over the
Mm.
world. Um, and so they would need help shipping stuff and packing. But it was amazing just to see how open they were. And I know with my exhibition, there was a whole ceremony that really surprised me where they had a microphone and people talking into the microphone and talking about me sometimes, which was like,
That's amazing. Okay, so all of this that you're telling me just
mm-hmm,
stuck with me. And I think that's a big reason why I have my podcast because I want to raise this cultural tide. I want the art world and the regular world to just kind of blend together. And because, if you're not involved in the arts, I think it's great to know contemporary live artists and how many people do. I My studio is next to a cornfield. I'm in a very conservative area. I feel like just more people need to know about art. And it would be my dream someday to have an I Like Art podcast sponsored show where we treated our artists like rock stars. It would be like an Indonesian style reception, man. And we would have the posters, we would have the fanfare, you would have a band or, nice string quartet, something, and just have a really classy, beautiful reception. I think that would be super cool. So I'm just saying that because I don't know. It's something that I remembered from you coming back. I thought, wow, that would be so cool. Because here, I don't know how many times people have asked me, coming to my studio, oh, you sell these? You make a living doing this? It's like a shock or it's a yeah right moment or it's the starving artist mentality. I just can't stand that. So anyway, I just
yeah, I
wanted
want
to.
to I want to highlight artists want to sell their work.
Yes.
Because it
Right.
makes us feel good too, not just to get the cash, but that's always nice
Mm-hmm.
because we usually put more into our work than we sometimes get when we sell it. But to know that somebody wants to live with your work is a really special thing. And when
Yeah.
somebody starts collecting your work, it's
Mm-hmm.
incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But I did want to circle back to earlier you mentioned self-taught artists. I think
Mm-hmm.
people come to art at different points in their life for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And often the self-taught artists, I think that's a misnomer because there are people who are taking workshops or they're taking online classes. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there are different forums to kind of learn about
Mm-hmm.
different techniques and different ways of being in the art.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I found really valuable is there's a program here at Western that allows senior citizens to take classes free.
Really?
Yes, yes,
I did not know that.
yes.
What kind of
And
classes? Any classes?
any classes. And sometimes they take them out of order, which is really interesting. So I've had a couple of students, one who's recent and one who's been taking classes here for years. Um, they take a lot of art classes. And like,
Really?
yes, yes. And so I've had them in my painting classes, and it's really interesting. One in particular, we voted as an art star because she's always
Yay!
in our classes, you know,
Amazing.
and it's been amazing to see her work grow and develop and then realize that her father is a painter too.
Mm,
Um, so there are often people who are retired, but who have an interest in art and haven't been able to fully explore that.
mm-hmm.
So, you know, there are different ways people can access information about art and art making
Yeah.
according to their community, or, you know, now with the internet, lots of things are possible. I have some people I know in the encaustic community who, now, of course, the name of what they set up is escaping me. I think it's CBC2 or something like that. So it's an online service where you can take a class or you can subscribe to their
Mm-hmm.
services, and you
Yeah.
get regular critiques with professional artists, and you have the opportunity to take online workshops with them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so,
Yes.
you know, people have adapted. So one interesting outcome of the pandemic is that more people figured out how to reach other people,
Yeah.
you know, and make
Yes.
things accessible.
Mm-hmm. I've had people ask me if I teach online, and it's I don't teach painting online, but I might make a YouTube tutorial and show how my process, and that's educational. So,
But you did a Zoom camp, right?
mhm. Well, I offered a Zoom camp, and ironically, not ironically, but nobody signed up for it. And I think I kind of ran it as a test for the first month. I didn't do a ton of marketing. I kind of wanted, see
Mhm.
what was out there and see the interest. And now looking back, I think it was just totally meant to be because that door closed. I ended up I didn't have anybody sign up. So I was disappointed at first, but then I realized, one, I don't know if I want to teach kids over Zoom all summer. And two, the thought was, I felt like kids, my kids would be watching YouTube videos all day if I let them. This would be less screen time, more engaged creating time, but it's
Mhm.
a class that's offered over Zoom on a screen. So it's like saying, I want your kids, or I want to help your kids not be on a screen as much, but the class is offered through a screen. So it's kind of like this weird thing. But it ended up being good because that not teaching that class closed a door, but other doors had opened. And, it's just kind of one of those things where that just wasn't in the cards. So I might offer something next year, but I also realized that making videos and editing them and then teaching kids is like another level. So I don't know. It's just interesting, but there are people that do it, and
Mhm.
I think it's very cool. So, how much time do you have left? I don't even know how long we've been chatting because we started a little later. Um, do you
So
have
good.
do you have a few more minutes?
Mhm.
I want to honor your time. Do you have some creative hobbies that we don't know about? Are you when you get home, are you feeling creative? You mentioned cooking. Um, maybe you have a craft hobby that I don't know about, but or are you, I have artists give me a variety of answers. Sometimes you feel creatively tapped out when you're home and not creating is your way of relaxing, or, I'm just curious.
I like to read. Like to go for walks in nature, and our house backs up to a nature preserve, so that's really convenient. But
Nice.
I'm a knitter, and
You are?
I belong to a knitting group. We meet once a month. And
Amazing.
one thing I discovered recently is that my dating friends in my group change the colors. So when they find a pattern they really want to make, they never do it in the colors they see it in. I
Mm.
frequently do it in the colors I see it in because I have to make all kinds of creative choices in my
Mm-hmm.
everyday life, and I don't
Mm.
want to have to do that sometimes in my knitting.
Mm-hmm. What do
But
you knit?
also, I knit all kinds of things. So right now I'm working on both a baby blanket and sweater pieces. I'm kind of
Okay.
switching back. I hit a point in a sweater where I had to rip a bunch out, so I need to look at the pattern and
Oh.
assess things to remember where I am in it. And the baby blanket, I don't, but it's triangular wedges, which is kind of fun to
Oh.
knit. So it's
Okay.
challenging, but not too challenging. Like it's just enough mental stimulation, and I can do that anytime. Like if we're driving somewhere and I'm not driving, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching TV. But I
Mm-hmm.
find one thing that kind of intersects from knitting to my artistic practice is that sometimes you just have to rip it out. You have to get rid of what you've done.
Mm-hmm.
And for your listeners who don't know very much about encaustic painting, it's painting on hot beeswax.
Mm-hmm.
And in any form of painting, really, there's usually something you can do if you end up in a bad place.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you, you need to take a turn. And um, yeah, so what I can do is I can scrape off my painting and I turn them
Oh,
into wax balls that I can then use to draw on my paintings.
really? Okay.
Yes. So paintings that I haven't liked have taken a new form and become part of my painting practice. And so that knowing when to do that is kind of important. And I credit
Mm-hmm.
my knitting with that.
It's like
Because
unraveling. Yes.
yeah, and also that in my knitting, I'm not a perfectionist. So like one
Mm.
knitting friend is an engineer, and she
Mm-hmm.
really likes, we've talked about this, that sometimes you need to have what we call an Amish moment where there's something that's not perfect in it because it's
Yeah.
handmade.
Yeah.
And I think paintings, art processes are very similar in that regard. And in my painting process, I often try to have something in the painting I'm not entirely comfortable with,
Mm.
because I think that challenges me. And
Mm-hmm.
hopefully it's something that, creates a little bit of tension in the piece, whether it's overt or more subtle.
Mm-hmm.
Because, if I had my way to do everything the way I want to do it, so I set it up so that doesn't happen, I would have, everything perfect and it would be too organized. And so in my
Okay.
process, I set some things up so that can't happen.
Oh,
So,
really?
so I have parameters within which I work, whether it's a specific color set or a specific types of shapes or lines.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Yes, I place limits that I have to work within when I'm making work. And in the
Mm-hmm.
process, also, it's like I can't have everything be pretty, because that would be layers and layers upon pretty, and that would be
Mm-hmm.
too much. So sometimes I have to live with things in the work that um, I'm not going to say they're imperfections, they're just shifts,
Mm-hmm. Have you,
that make the piece more its own thing.
uh-huh. I could talk about this topic alone for days, but have you ever allowed yourself to make a pretty something that's just pretty? Or it's like you would never go there.
I have, no, I have.
Okay.
And usually I don't find it very satisfying.
Okay. I didn't mean to say just pretty either. I make a lot of pretty things and
And
it's
yeah,
fun.
sometimes I do things for aesthetic purposes, but
Yeah.
usually there's something I can't quite control in it
Mm.
that I build into the process.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, there's so much challenge in that. That's probably the best. Yeah.
It's what
Always
makes you keep
challenging yourself.
wanting to do it. And I try to shift things up from piece to piece so it's not always the same
Mm-hmm.
equation.
Mm-hmm. I was on your website yesterday and I really love seeing the installation views of your work and
Hmm.
seeing how they all they look it's an experience when you see them all laid out on the wall a certain way and the way that you create patterns with the different pieces, how they play with each, next to each other. And there's definitely a lot of thought that goes into your presentation, I can tell. And it is kind of reminiscent. A few of those photos I saw, I thought, I wonder if quilting is a part of her childhood, or you talked about the fabric patterns, because some of them look like a visual quilt almost on the wall as a grid with your individually, each piece is so interesting and powerful, but then even seeing them all together, it's just really cool. So I think having those installation views on your website is so helpful, and I love that. So I definitely encourage people to go check out your website and check out your work and really get you have good close-up photos too, and the
Oh, thank you.
patterns. And so very well done. It's it's one of those things where I could see where someone might want to collect a few at a time and then have them, show together. I love that. So thank you for sharing. And it's one of those things where, do you feel like with your work, you may have, because I have that with mine, I don't have a lot of my own paintings in our house because of, you look at it and you know where the spot is that you would fix, or the tension point. Do you feel like a lot of the times you see that tension point, but others don't? Or do you feel like people can see that? Or maybe it's a combination.
I think it's a combination. I don't have my own work in my house for the most part because I like to have work by other people I know.
Yeah.
Because I see my work at the studio. I
Yeah.
like to also I like to have my work out in the world as much as
Mm-hmm.
possible.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, like as an aside, I had a unique opportunity last year. A dear friend who died probably in 2008 or 2009. His wife was auctioning off his work or selling his work through the Kalamazoo Book Art Center, and the
Mm.
proceeds went to the Book Art Center. And he was a founding member of the Book Art Center. His name was Paul Robert, and he was an amazing
Mm,
paper
mm-hmm.
maker.
Oh,
And
yes.
he did paper
Handmade
pulp paintings.
paper.
Yeah, and he was one of the first people in the department who really befriended me and had the office across
Mm.
from me. And so we got a 30 by 40-inch paper pulp painting of his, and it's in my studio now,
Okay.
sandwiched in between foam core, because I bought the frame and the mat board and stuff, and now I'm looking at it thinking I think I just need to take this to someone else to put together.
Oh, yeah.
But that's going to be in our house.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have paintings of another friend who's a professor emeritus in our house. And actually, when our son was born, he gave us some paintings he did on paintings he found in thrift stores.
Mm.
And like my son always called one the Elephant Man painting because it looked like
Mm.
an elephant figure.
Okay.
Because you could see part of the painting original
Oh,
thing underneath it, and then you could see my friend's painting on top of it.
uh-huh.
Um, so I like having work by people I know in the
Mm-hmm.
house, but also work that my husband and I both find interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't tend to live with it in my space, but as far as those imperfections, I think they're just part of the piece.
Mm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
don't look at them as flaws.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I
Mm.
I kind of intentionally put them in there so things aren't too fluid and easy,
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
for me and for the viewer. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
some visual tension there to enjoy.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And the layers, all the transparent layers, it's so amazing. I think encaustic work is fascinating. It's just a fascinating process. I'm not super familiar with it, but
Well, the weird thing is that so my encaustic paintings don't necessarily look like wax.
Mhm.
My acrylic paintings look like wax.
Of course. That's
And that's,
interesting.
yeah. And actually, if you've got time, I just want to briefly tell you about a series I'm working on in acrylic
Yeah.
called United States of America.
Mhm.
So this, started from all the tension that we've experienced through the pandemic and the elections, and
Mhm.
divergent
Yeah.
opinions about so
Yeah.
many things. And so I wanted to make some work that would, in some ways, be equalizing and unifying,
Mm.
that would
Mhm.
have elements about each state. So each piece is state
Mm.
specific. And
Ooh.
so I look at the state's history, I look at its racial history and demographics, I look at its geological history. Um, Surprisingly, with some states, more pop culture history, because
Mm.
for some states, that's actually the majority of what I find. But I always include some racial demographics and some historical information too. And so I've started building those up. So my first part of it was the Great Lakes states,
Mm-hmm.
because where I live.
Mm-hmm.
And that was also part of working out the form that these pieces would take. Because,
Mm-hmm.
I just finished the golden residency. So it's like, well, how do I do this? And my thought was I could do it in wax, but I wanted to do it in acrylic because it would force me to use what I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
So it would help me develop as an artist in some different directions. And I've been really happy with how they've been starting to come out and how they've been received. And they involve layers of information. So
Oh, I love this.
there are symbols embedded in the pieces, some of which you can see more easily and some you can't. So it
Okay.
almost becomes like a Where's Waldo,
Mm-hmm.
but they still have like line work of things in different colors to symbolize our divergent opinions,
Oh.
intersecting. So they still play with some of the central themes in my current work, but they add some other things to the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Are these private that you're working on them right now?
No, they're not.
They're not? I
Nope.
want to see. You're probably
I
not in
think
your office.
I've got some on my website.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I do. I don't know if I've added the captions yet for the titles, but I know the images are up there.
Okay. I'm gonna have to look. Amazing.
I'm gonna have the captions up by the time you drop this podcast.
Perfect. So they can go check them out. And
Yes.
where is the show? So I'm picturing a show or some kind of cohesive sharing of this work. Do you have a place in mind? Do you have a deadline?
I originally did, and then I realized it wasn't necessarily practical to do that,
Mm,
because um, it depends on what's going on in my life. So what I actually find is it takes me longer to do these paintings than it does encaustic painting.
mm-hmm,
And people think I'm crazy when I say this. It takes longer for things to dry. When you paint in wax, they dry right away, like as soon as the air
mm-hmm,
hits it.
mm-hmm,
And although acrylic is fast drying, when you start playing with mediums and skins and other things, it takes a while
mm-hmm.
for things to dry. So I'm having to work on more than one piece at a time so I can juggle between pieces. Right now they're round and
Mm,
they're on panels, which I really like because to me it seems like they're part of a bigger whole when you see something in that form.
mm-hmm.
And so far, everyone I've taken to the Addington Gallery in Chicago has sold.
Well, gee.
And so initially
Okay.
I thought about not selling them, and I was taking some work to the gallery, and Dan, the gallery owner, messaged me and said, "What about that piece you posted on Facebook, that round one with this and this, and you posted on this date?" And I said, "Well, I was going to hold that back and keep it in the faculty show." And then he said, "So you posted that and you tagged me, and I've had two clients inquire about it. That's all I'm
Mm,
going to say. So, the choice is up to you." So
mm-hmm,
I initially thought about holding on to them, but I realized in a way that didn't quite make sense for where I am right now.
mm-hmm,
I've got pictures of them, so I
mm-hmm.
suspect at some point they'll become a catalog, but also
Yeah.
I could always contact the people who own the pieces to see if I can get a loan of them to have a big show of the work,
Yeah.
which might
I
be a nice thing to do before I retire, right?
Yeah. When I was gonna say when is that? But
I'm not sure,
not sure. Okay.
but
Well,
I
maybe
can
you
see
have
it.
52 paintings to make, so it's gonna take you some time, right?
Right. I've got five of those made. Yeah. So that
Yeah.
could extend past that point. We'll see.
Yeah. Yep, you have plenty of time. That sounds amazing. A catalog would be great. Even with the captions and everything, I can see that. Oh, I love this. I'm very excited about the series. I love the idea of the United States. It's like, are we united? We should be.
Well, and States of America is parenthetical, so states is lowercase. So
Mm,
it can speak to a lot of things.
yeah.
But also, I wanted people from different perspectives to be able to come to it and look at it. So I guess, one of the great things about art is that art can be a conversation starter, it can be a catalyst for change, it can document, it can do all kinds of things. And I'm trying not to put biases in it, but show historical facts,
Mm-hmm.
and hoping that maybe it'll in some small way it'll help the concept of how some people think of our country.
Yeah. Amazing. That is incredible. I love this. I love the idea and I'm gonna look those up for sure. Okay. Let's wrap this up. I want to be honorable of your time. Is there a dream collaboration or project aside from this amazing series that you're creating?
I think this is my dream project. And for me, it came about because I had an opportunity to apply for something that I didn't get, but where I had to think of a bigger project.
Mm,
And I think it was when I've thought of projects, primarily thought of them in like 1 year increments.
mm-hmm.
So I can get this done in this year and or bodies of work. And this time I wanted to do something that had a different kind of life to it,
Mm,
that was a little bigger and
yeah.
grander, and
Yes.
I'm at a different point in my career. So this is it. What I'm working
Mm-hmm.
on right now, this is it, I think.
Amazing. I think
But
that's so.
I'm always open to possibilities.
Mhm.
And I think that's important as a creative person.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really cool to talk about those bigger projects too, because it's intimidating, right? It's intimidating to start something that seems so big. Um, I had a thought about a series of 26 paintings, and still that feels like a little bit bigger than normal for me. And yeah, and then wanting to nail down, okay, well, I can do this in 9 months or a year. Well, who cares? You can peck away at it. You can have it as a side project. You don't have to have this be your main focus. You can just kind of peck away at it as you want. And so I love that. Thank you for sharing. Do we have time for a rapid round of questions? Is there anything else you want to share?
I do want to share that I'm a member of the Kalamazoo Art League, and
Okay.
we have a lecture series every year. So our lecture series started this month. It's usually the second Wednesday of the month.
Mm-hmm.
So our next one is November 8th, and it's
Mm-hmm.
Naida Calazo Lorenz.
Mm,
She's originally from Puerto Rico, and she's going to be talking about her work in installations. She lives in Kalamazoo.
mm-hmm.
So it's at 10 a.m. on November the 8th at the Kalamazoo Institute of Art if you happen to be in the area.
Do you have to buy tickets or is it free or sign
You
up?
can buy tickets at the door. I think tickets are
Okay.
$10
Okay.
unless you get a membership, and memberships are 40. So, you
Okay.
could just get a membership and come to the rest of our lectures. We also have really interesting events, and there's always a reception of some sort affiliated with the event. So there are
Mm.
opportunities to get to know other people who love art in the area.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I need to join that.
You
I miss
do.
Kalamazoo. I'm 40 minutes from Kalamazoo, but I will always consider myself a Kalamazoo artist because of being in the Park Trade Center, and the talent in the community in Kalamazoo is pretty amazing. There's a huge amount of artists, and it's just a very vibrant place to be an artist. And I love that. I know when I was a student, we went to many shows and there was always something going on in Kalamazoo. So I love that. Okay. Now for the more important questions. Are
Mhm.
you ready?
I'm
Top of
stealing
mi-
myself. Yes.
top of mind, I'm still happy to hear that you're a knitter. I think that's awesome. I can knit a scarf, just a straight line, but it's so fun. I love that you have something creative. I did not know that. I'm a little surprised, but that's so cool. Okay, Kat, what is your favorite color?
Okay. So it's either okay, so it's really like a teal blue or turquoise blue. But I also like
Ooh.
purples and olives. So it's
Mm-hmm.
hard for me to pick one, but I
It
tend to
is hard.
gravitate towards a turquoisey blue.
Okay. So today it's turquoise. Those are all
Today it
very
is, yes.
nice colors, very cool colors, calming. All right, you're at your studio and you're about to get started. What is your work beverage of choice while you're in your
Uh,
studio?
Lime LaCroix.
Really? Oh,
Mhm.
I love lime LaCroix. That's so fun.
I always
Yum.
have them in my mini fridge.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Mhm.
Yum. That's very good. Is there a book or a movie you want to mention for whatever reason?
I'm blanking. So, and I know we've actually watched some good movies recently, but I'm totally blanking right now.
Okay.
I
If you
blame
think,
the being I blame being a puppy parent because it's also like being a parent where things just fall out of your head because you've been so busy
yeah.
keeping an eye on this little creature. Yes.
Yep. That's busy. That's super busy. Okay, this is interesting. I get my ideas and inspiration while I'm driving around in my car. Some people while they're in the shower. Where does inspiration strike for you?
Often when I'm driving or when I'm taking walks.
Okay, same. Love
Hmm.
that. Okay. Um, okay, is there something you wish you were good at that you're not? For me, it's playing volleyball. It's random, but
Well, right now it's pickleball. So I just joined up. I'm playing in my first recreational pickleball league. And the
Nice.
stats came out this morning, and I think I had the lowest points of
Okay.
anyone. So I'd like to be a little better. Last week I was second to last with my
Okay.
point spread. So I'm working on that. I'm working on
Mm-hmm.
pickleball.
I bet you're
And
gonna
I'm
kill it.
also, I don't know about that, but I'm enjoying it. So part of
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to do is, you know, actively learn. So I
Mm-hmm.
know things I need to work on, but I'm trying to just enjoy the experience too.
Yeah. Because we don't have to be good at things to have fun.
We don't. And it's important just to enjoy doing things. And I like that you get to meet new people when you play pickleball in
Mm-hmm.
this fashion. And, yes, I'm learning new things and it definitely challenges my comfort zone.
And it's good exercise.
It is.
Yeah. It's funny. We learned how to, we went camping last summer and my sister-in-law had pickleball paddles and the ball with her.
Hmm.
And the campground we stayed at, they had a pickleball court. So that was my first time playing. We actually have a net in our pole barn now. So if you ever want to come over to my studio, we can take a break and play pickleball.
I'll remember that.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not good either. It could be quite comical, but
But it's fun.
but it's
We'll have
fun.
fun.
It's like, who cares? It's like ping pong, but tennis. I don't know. I love that. Do you have a creative challenge for my listeners today?
That's a good question. Um, I would say see what inspires you throughout the day and see if there's something you can do with that in
Mm,
your creative process.
okay.
Even if it seems like it's at odds with what you're doing in your work, just see if there's some way you can fold it in, whether it's the incorporation of a different color or a type of
Mm,
line or a texture.
mm-hmm. I love that. That's so good. It's simple advice, but it's really good. You know
Well,
what I
and
mean?
it would make you be more aware of what you're doing throughout the day and what you're encountering.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here. How can we support you going forward?
Well, keep checking my website. If you're in
Mm-hmm.
Chicago, check me out at Addington Gallery. Even if you're not in Chicago, you can see my work on the web on his website.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just stay tuned. Things are always happening.
Yes. Do you have any
And
shows
right,
coming up?
I do. So I'm in two Fuse Chicago shows. So Fuse Chicago is an organization of people who paint in wax and make
Mm-hmm.
artwork in wax,
Mm,
who live in this region. So it's primarily focused in Chicago, but it's in this area outside of Chicago because we're about 2 hours and 15 minutes away from Chicago. So I'm in a show at Blue Moon Gallery called Small Wonders in Grayslake,
mm-hmm.
Illinois, that opens this Saturday
Yay,
and is
congratulations.
thank you. It's up through most of November. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to be in a small works show at the Addington Gallery that's up through November and December. And then I'm also in a Fuse Chicago show called Connections, which is Connections with Nature. That's the first juried exhibition for Fuse Chicago, opening at Art Gallery, I think on the 18th of November.
Okay. Ooh, you have a lot going on. Amazing. You're
I
in
like
it.
to stay busy.
Yes, you do. Oh, Kat, this was so wonderful chatting. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your art and your wisdom. I've learned so much from you throughout the years, and it's just wonderful. And it's so lovely to have you here on the show. It's just such an honor to talk to you.
Well, thank you, Sarah. And like right back at you. Thank you so much for inviting me. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And thank you for including me in this venture of yours. And, I really appreciate our continued relationship because
Me
it's really
too.
grown from where it was in 2005.
I know, little baby Sarah, little artist, still learning, still doing things. And I appreciate right back at you. Same thing. I'm just so appreciative. And it's just wonderful working together and this new ways to work together. I love that. And so thank you again. I know we'll be in touch. I know my listeners are just going to love this episode. So thanks for all of your wisdom and for sharing. And I guess that's it for now. So everyone, have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next week on another episode of I Like Art. Thanks again, Kat. You're amazing. And we'll
Thank
be in
you.
touch. Bye.
Bye.